Hi, and welcome to Canterbury Cottage. Today I have collected my all-time best-selling Christmas DIYs. This video is literally packed with great ideas. Whether you're looking for DIYs to sell, to give as gifts, or just to make for yourself, you won't be disappointed. So, let's get started.
This simple project using a thrift store picture frame and scrapbook paper always sells out in my booth every year. I painted my frame with 2 coats of black chalk paint. When the paint was dry, I lightly distressed the edges with 220 grit sandpaper and then applied a coat of clear wax. I printed out this image of vintage sheet music in a size to fit my frame, and then I cut it out, and using a quality glue stick, I adhered it to the back of the picture frame. Then I cut several strips off of some old Christmas-themed scrapbook paper that I had. I played around with the patterns and the lengths of the strips of paper to create a Christmas tree shape. I used glue stick to adhere the strips of paper to the sheet music. I angled the strips and overlapped them to create a random look. I also printed out just the title portion of the sheet music and added that strip of paper to the tree. I reattached the back to its frame, and then to clean up the back of the frame, I covered it with another piece of scrapbook paper, attaching it once again with glue stick. For the next project, you can use whatever paper you like. Old sheet music, pages from a book or dictionary, old Christmas cards, it's totally up to you. Cut out 2 identical stocking shapes to create a front and back for your ornament. Hot glue the edges together, leaving the top of the stocking open. Glue some ribbon around the top of the stocking to create a cuff. Create a loop with some florist wire and hot glue it to the inside edges of the stocking. Insert some pine stems and berries into the opening of the stocking, and then embellish the stocking with whatever adornments you have on hand. I like to add snowflakes, jingle bells, buttons, old jewelry, and of course, more ribbon. I think this next project sells really well because it makes a great gift for just about anyone. Print out the birdseed labels that I have linked below, and using Mod Podge, adhere them to whatever jars you have on hand. I used some old mason jars. Buy a bird's nest or make one from angel hair vine that will fit on the top of your jar lid. Shape the vine into a small circle and then twist florist wire around it to hold it in place. Hot glue it to your lid and then hot glue a small piece of sheet moss to the center. Hot glue a fake bird in your nest. This one was an old Christmas ornament. And then dress up your nest with a little Spanish moss, tiny pine cones, a little greenery, jingle bells, some fake snow, whatever you like. Then finish it off by tying a pretty bow around the lid of the jar. Fill the jar with birdseed, and you have an unusual but pretty gift. Making snowmen out of old salt shakers is not a new idea, but they're so cute, and I have a shortcut for making them. Add a little fake snow to your salt shaker, and then take one of the snowman head ornaments from Walmart. I don't think the face is very cute, so I remove the eyes and nose and use sandpaper to remove the mouth. You can also remove the hat if you like and replace it with the salt shaker lid. I like to reuse the carrot nose, but then I use a paint pen to draw on the eyes and the mouth. I use a pink highlighter to create rosy cheeks. I just hot glue the styrofoam ball to the top of the salt shaker, and then I take a small strip of fabric and wrap it around the threads of the jar to create a scarf. Then finish it off with additional embellishments, maybe a pom-pom for his hat, a snow shovel full of little snowballs, a wreath, or change out the decorations on his hat. The possibilities are endless. These next ornaments are probably my all-time bestseller. You'll need some glass ornaments. I like the flat square ones from Hobby Lobby, but the flat round ones work well too. Use old Christmas cards or print out vintage Christmas images to fit the back of your ornament. Apply a thin, even coat of Mod Podge to the front of your image and to the back of your ornament. Place the image face side down on the back of the ornament and then gently smooth out the paper. When the Mod Podge is completely dry, apply another coat of Mod Podge on the back of the paper, and while it is still wet, sprinkle on some glitter in a color that coordinates with your image. I recommend spraying a top coat over the glitter to help prevent shedding. Then fill your ornament about 1/4 of the way full with fake snow or whatever ornament filler you would like to use. Sparkly sequins and miniature Christmas lights are both good options. I even used a couple Santa erasers. Then attach a ribbon for hanging purposes. Although it's not necessary, if you want a more finished look, you could hot glue rick-rack, pipe cleaners, or other trim around the edge of the image. Because many of you requested ideas for repurposing old Christmas cards, I wanted to make sure they would work on the glass ornaments. The paper is heavier, so it's harder to work with than the printed images, but it turned out just fine, and I was able to add an additional image to the front of the ornament. Now, for all the snowman lovers, this next project is for you. Start with some cheap wood blocks and spray paint them white. Use Zinsser primer to hide any printing on the blocks. Distress the edges with sandpaper when the paint is dry. Then super glue 3 blocks together, angling each block a bit so they are not just stacked perfectly one on top of the other. To create a carrot nose, I cut the points off a small wooden star that came in a package of wood pieces, and then I painted it orange and superglued it to the top block. I used a black paint pen to create buttons, eyes, and a mouth for the snowman. Then I painted some pink circles for his cheeks. I cut a small strip of fabric off of a thrifted scarf to create a scarf for the snowman. To create a hat, I cut a wider piece off of the end of the scarf and then rolled the raw edge over 2 times and hot glued it in place. I hot glued the rolled end of the scarf around the top block. I wrapped some thread around the fringed end and tightened it, and then tied it in a knot to hold it in place. To create arms, I drilled 2 holes, one on each side of the middle block at a slight angle, and then hot glued a small stick in each hole. To create a cape, I cut off the opposite end of the scarf and rolled the raw end a couple times and hot glued it in place. And then I cut 2 small holes for the stick arms to fit through. I decided to make a belt for one of the snowmen using a small buckle that I had. And then I made him earmuffs using small pom-poms that I had. To create a hanger for the snowman, I drilled a small hole in the top center block and then inserted 2 ends of a small piece of twine into the hole and added some super glue. To coordinate my snowman, I created 4 different outfits out of one piece of fabric, but an easier option would be to make scarves for all of the snowmen in different but coordinating fabrics. Here's another ornament idea that I sell out of every year. Cut up some old paperback books with a miter saw or a utility knife. Print out some Christmas book cover images on cardstock in sizes to fit your little books. Use Mod Podge to attach the little book covers to the front of your book. If you use my images, I have also included a color-coordinated back piece to Mod Podge to the back of your book, but you could cover the back of the book with a piece of scrapbook paper. To create a hanger for your book, take a loop of a ribbon and place it along the binding on the inside center of your book and hot glue it in place. My next ornament idea is super easy. Spray paint some small frames that you're no longer using. Distress them with sandpaper if you like. Print out some vintage Christmas sheet music in sizes to fit your frames. Return the cardboard back, tearing off the stand if there is one. Because you may be able to see the back of the frame when it's hanging in your Christmas tree, cover the back with a pretty piece of scrapbook paper or an old Christmas card. Cut it to fit and use glue stick to adhere it. To create a hanger for your frame, drill a small hole in the top center of your frame and then screw in a small eye hook. You can then attach a hook or a small ribbon to the eye hook. Embellish the frame if you like. I think a few sprigs of greenery and some berries and a little bow look very nice. These little hot cocoa jars are a top seller in my booth. Print out these vintage labels in sizes to fit whatever empty glass jars you have on hand. Dollar Tree carries jars with red, gold, and green lids during the holiday season. Cut out the labels and decoupage them to the side of your jars. If you're using empty salsa and pickle jars like I sometimes do, you might want to spray paint the lid red or green. When using mason jars, I like to cover the round, flat lid part with decorative scrapbook paper. I use Mod Podge to adhere the scrapbook paper to the lid, and then I just go around the edges and cut the extra paper off. You might want to spray paint a thrifted basket to put your jars in. Here's another top seller for me that repurposes old glass jars. I ask for and receive free olive and pickle jars from a local restaurant. Then I make vinyl labels on my Cricut machine or print out pretty vintage labels like this one to attach to the jars with Mod Podge. I paint the lids with coordinating colors of chalk paint, and then when the paint is dry, I distress the lids and apply a little clear wax. I fill the jars with cookie cutters that I've thrifted throughout the year, and I use one cookie cutter as an ornament to hang on the outside of the jar. I also like to attach a vintage recipe card with a sugar cookie recipe on the outside of the jar. Candles always sell really well at Christmas time, especially if they are in a one-of-a-kind jar. For this first idea, I start with an inexpensive thrift store jar. Cut out landscape silhouettes in black vinyl on your Cricut machine and apply them around your glass jar. Put a candle wick in the middle of your jar, holding it in place by running it through a hole in a straw. Melt some old candles down in an oven set at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. It can take anywhere from 30 minutes to over an hour. Pour the melted wax into your glass jar. Then add a few drops of your favorite fragrance oil. You can add crayons to the melted wax to change the color. If you don't have a Cricut machine, you can create unique and personalized labels to decoupage to the outside of your jars. Creating coordinating matchboxes for your candles makes them even more unique. Once you have found the images that you would like to use, print them out in a small size to cover the front and back of a matchbox. Apply Mod Podge to the back of the image and then adhere it to your matchbox, smoothing out any wrinkles and cutting off any extra paper. I'll be back next week with all new Christmas DIYs. Until then, here's another video I think you'll like.